What's going on, guys? I'm Chris with Swamp Rabbit Moving, and today we got a special guest, Steven DeLisle. Steven, how you doing, my friend?
Good, brother. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. I usually see Steven on the golf course when I'm beating him, but today we got him in here. So, Steven, tell us about the journey into real estate for you. Like, how'd you get into real estate, and when did you get into real estate?
Yeah, so my first year was 2014. Got in halfway through the year.
Okay.
And before that, I was working at Michelin. I actually worked there for a number of years. I like to rebuild engines and cars and stuff, and did that with my dad growing up. So I liked the idea of mechanic type stuff. So that's why I went to Michelin first and was working on all of their big machines that built the tires. And then after a while, I was like, man, I'm really tired of smelling like tires and just, it's a gross job. Yeah. And my mom went into real estate like 5 years before me. And she's like, I think you'd be really good at this. It's like, I don't know. I'll try it. And so I was actually sitting down at Michelin and on my breaks would study for it. And a lot of the guys were like, there's no money to be made in real estate. Like, stop doing that. You're good here. Stop. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to take the test. I actually failed the test 4 times. So
the real estate test?
Yeah. There's a state and a national.
Yeah.
And a lot of what you learn there, honestly, is different laws and regulations or different cases, if you will. It has very little to do with the day-to-day stuff of what you actually do for the job and serving your clients. So I was like, Mom, I don't know if I'm going to be cut out for this. She's like, just take it one more time. So I passed it. It's like, okay. So I got into it and I realized that it's a lot harder to be consistent and be your own boss. It sounded really good. And I was like, I'm going to save up, 1 year's salary and then jump in full time. And God had different plans. He's like, nope, you're going to do it now. So I actually had maxed out credit cards, no money in the bank. And I was like, oh man, this is way more difficult than I thought it was. So I just started talking to 50 to 100 people a day. And then that tidal wave of business kept coming. I figured out real quick what didn't work and the few things that did, and I just stuck with those things.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's a cool story. And it's crazy how, from the flip of a dime, your plans change and you have to go all in. So that's cool to see. And to see you crushing it now. So what was it like jumping fully in on that real estate and not having like that set paycheck and like you really having to go out there? And like you said, it was different being your own boss. Like now you have to have some self-discipline to get out there and do revenue generating tasks.
Well, so our first house that we bought, my wife and I, it was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath mill house by Simpsonville. It was on half an acre. So I was like, I really like that. But I tell this story every single time I teach a class because people see the fact that I sell between $15 to $20 million a year now, but they don't know where it started and what that looked like. Yeah. And when I had those maxed out credit cards and I was my own boss, but I realized that there was no money in the bank, I was like, okay, I have to get serious about this. So I literally did not get dressed. I stayed in my boxers. I said, I cannot go anywhere. My job is to set appointments. I have nothing else to do other than this phone I barely pay for and the computer that I have. So I just started and I built my business by helping for sell by owners. And I just got really good at asking questions and letting them talk the most. Because what I found through talking to 50 to 100 people a day is that a lot of agents seem to just call them and say like, hey, you're doing all these things wrong, hire me. Yeah. And so I took a different approach and I just asked them questions. I stayed curious. It wasn't about me. It was about what do you need? If you want to do this for sell by owner thing for 2 months, 6 months, or you're just testing the market, like that's fine. But it's really my job to understand what's out there in the market, talk to a lot of people. So I might find a buyer, but right now I don't have one. And when I came at it like that, they put their guard down because on the phone, you only have rate of speech and tone of voice. So I don't know who that person is. And I just took the mindset. I was like, look, if I pass you in the grocery store, I'm not going to know who you are and you're not going to know who I am. So I just started like doing little funny things like, I figured I'd call you today. I knew you weren't going to call me. Like little funny jabby things that they're getting berated by 15, 20, sometimes 50 agents a day. So they're like, oh God, another agent. Like, hey, I'm just here to help. Like, I don't know what your situation is. So that's what really skyrocketed my business. The first full year I sold 48 for sell by owners, which is
holy smoke,
super hard.
Your first year. That's crazy. So now that you've kind of developed into a more, have you found like a certain niche that you prefer? Like, what do you work with the most typically? What kind of buyer? Like first time home buyer, luxury?
It's really the whole thing. So
whole
like
thing?
my tagline is with DeLisle Properties, luxury comes standard. So to me, I built the box big enough, and I had a coach that said, look, you're going to turn into having just past clients and referrals. In addition to what we do now is like mostly marketing and taking care of the people that we helped previously in the past years. So whether it's the doctor I helped buy that $1 million house, or it's now their daughter is ready to buy their first house, I'll help anybody.
Yeah.
My first grouping of investor homes, like each of those homes were $25,000 each.
Yeah.
So to me, it doesn't matter about the ticket price. I want to help the person, because my mindset is let's get that spider web of awareness of who I am, what I do, the services I provide, so that you will go out of your way. If you hear somebody at a restaurant or a concert that's thinking about moving, you will go out of your way to go talk to them and say like, no, you need to use Steven, and here's why.
Yeah. How do you feel, how do you ensure that both the buyer and the seller, whichever one you're representing, feels confident throughout the whole real estate process? Like real estate, I'm sure well, I've been through the process, so I know the process is a little bit scary. Like there's a lot of unknown, waiting for a contract to get approved or whatever the case may be. How do you make sure that you're walking alongside of them and keeping them confident throughout the whole process?
Whether it's a first phone call or I prefer sit downs, I'm kind of old school in that way.
Yeah.
I like to meet face to face. I want to get all the senses in there, not just a phone call. I want to make sure that they're comfortable, they're confident, and I tell them really, it's my brain thinks in terms of dominoes. So the first domino is, hey, we're sitting here. The last domino is you buy a house. There's a lot of dominoes in between, and we can't knock one over before the first one goes. So here's the step-by-step process. Here's the next 3 things, and I kind of visually tell them, buyer or seller, you know your house really well. So I imagine if we, in the middle of the night, you had all the lights off and you're going to guide me through your house, you'd probably hold me by my hand and walk me through, because I don't know where the furniture is, but you do.
Yeah.
So same thing goes for real estate, is I'm going to make sure that you understand where we are, the next 3 steps, because to me, if I tell you more than that, you're going to get lost in the details of it, and that's kind of irrelevant to me at the moment. So I want to make sure that you're comfortable with what's going on, but I'm also going to expose things that you may not have thought of. And what I found over the years is people really appreciate that. Like, oh, I didn't think of that part of it, or I didn't think of that cost, or truly what it's going to cost to buy or sell a house. So I'm giving you awareness of things. And then sometimes people choose not to move right then. And they say like, hey, I really appreciate that you didn't pressure me into this or didn't tell me these things, so that I'm super stressed like halfway through this process. So now's not the right time, but maybe let's talk in June.
Yeah.
And in between there, I'm finding that I'm getting referrals from those people too, because I'm zero pressure. Like, look, if you want to work with me, great. If you don't, then there's 4,000 other agents in Greenville.
Absolutely.
Pick one.
Yeah, there's a lot of value in that. And not being like just a high pressure kind of situation. It's more relationship, right? Like even if they don't buy a house at all, eventually they're going to know somebody who's going to buy a house, and they're going to trust you because you showed the integrity not to pressure them into something they weren't ready for.
Yeah, and I always thought too, I was like, if I'm going to hire this person, I'm going to work with them. It's not, I used to be a server too in college. I had 3 jobs at one time, and I realized like I'm sitting with that person, or I'm serving that person for a couple hours. Now I'm serving that person for 30, 40 days. Sometimes it's 6 months, or I've had clients that search for a house for years.
Yeah.
So I'm like, do I really want to spend time with them, A, and B, if I have and when I have a client event, would they fit into the party? If not, because also, let's just be honest, crazy people know other crazy people.
Yep.
And I actually asked that in a listing appointment. I'm like, hey, who's the crazy person in the neighborhood? And if they don't know anybody, then it's them.
They're them. Yeah. The red flag has been shown.
Yeah. Even though they don't know it. Yeah.
Okay. Take a couple steps back.
Anyway, I've got an appointment I'm late to.
That's too funny.
Mm-hmm.
So, what a lot of people might not know about you is you do some real estate investing too.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about 3 tips for sellers and how they can make their property more valuable when they're looking to sell.
I think it's all about curb appeal. Again, through the phase of dominoes, it's why am I going to get my car and go see this house?
Yeah.
So presentation's a big deal online, which we take care of, and I have a marketing person on the team that specifically does that for me, and she does a really good job, videos, photos, etc. exposure on YouTube and all the other platforms. But then let's say we finally get there, and sometimes photos lie a little bit, or the perception is like, oh man, it looked better online. So I want to make sure that those two things match, and we don't hide anything. If there's a huge tower pole for the cell phone tower or something like that, we're going to show it in there, because the last thing I want to do is waste anybody's time, because that's my biggest fear too, is don't take advantage of me and don't waste my time. So I don't want to do that to the consumer either. And so we present it as it's presented. And then when they get there, mulch, flowers, make sure that the garage door isn't dented from the 5-year-old that ran their bike into it. There's certain things that are going to get you 100% return plus. And there's some things that when I go over to a seller's house, I'm like, look, I hear you and I understand you want to do X, Y, Z to the house. Here are the things you really need to do to get your return.
Yeah.
And if you listen to me, you actually will get that return. But if you want to spend extra money and not get it, then that's fine too.
Yep. Cool. That's really good to know. It's always good to be able to maximize the amount you can get for your house. So great tips.
Yeah. Even one more thing to add to that, like the front door.
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't think about this, but the lockbox is right there on the front door most of the time. So that buyer is having a lot of time to sit around and look at the cobwebs or that paint job you did on a Saturday quick.
Yeah.
Like that's a very key location for everything to be perfect.
Absolutely. No, I could definitely see that. Tell us about where you think the real estate market is going in Greenville, South Carolina. You know, we've seen a big boom, influx of out-of-state population, and just a lot of movement in the Greenville real estate in the Greenville real estate market. Where do you think it's going in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's going to be a hard one, because in my personal opinion, humble opinion, if I'm forecasting that far out, I'm talking out of my ear.
Yeah.
I really don't know. What I do know is we can track the dominoes behind us or the dots behind us. And even in 2008, and this is what I tell to buyers and sellers that are like, oh, I'm going to wait for the market to crash. I said, well, it very well could tomorrow. There's outside sources that we're not aware of, or a war that could break out that I have no control over or awareness of. So for me to speak on that would be a little silly.
Yep.
But let's talk about the very short forecasting.
What about this year?
Yeah, this year. So in 2008, for example, I tell everybody, like, we slowed down in growth, but we never went into the red like Charlotte or Atlanta. Currently, the average price in Charlotte and Atlanta is $420,000.
Okay.
Here in Greenville is $380,000. So value for money goes a lot further here. Your quality of life is a lot better. I'm having a ton of different people from California, New Jersey, Connecticut, Ohio, Florida, all move here. I currently have like 157 new leads in the back end of my website that I have to go through and talk to. And it's because they're seeing that the fact that we're the top 5 growth city in the entire United States. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of attention that you and I don't have to pay for or work for. It's the city's doing the growth for us.
Yep.
So in 2020 through 23, we grew at 20% each year. Now we're at 4.3%. So we're again in that stage of we're growing slower, but we're still growing. Mm-hmm. Where Charlotte and Atlanta are stagnant. Yeah. We're also not Charlotte and Atlanta in the terms of multi-million-dollar homes. We do have those, but the meat of our market is 250 to 350 right now.
Yeah.
In the $1 million range, it's a buyer's market. It's over 6 months of inventory, and statistically, if you have 6 months of inventory, there's an even market, one buyer to one seller.
Yeah.
Anything below 6 months is going to be a seller's market. Anything above 6 months is a buyer's market.
Okay.
So I think we're feeling a little bit of a suppression in the 750 range. I think buyers are also expecting that if I'm going to pay $5,000 for my mortgage, that house has to be perfect. So the expectations set by the agents, in my opinion, should be tip top, because a lot of these people that are selling, whether it's a $300,000 house or $1 million one, I'm asking them, hey, what are your payments per month? Because probably they don't have a 7% or 6.5% interest rate. So it's all again, it's about perspective. And I'm telling them, okay, well, based off this price and the interest rates, this is the expectation that you're asking them to pay for your house. Mm-hmm. Would you do the same? Yeah. And they're like, no, but I love my house. No, you can love your house, but also that's what it's translating to. So if we're going to ask them to pay this astronomical price or whatever that price is per month, then we need to make sure the product fits that.
You have to validate it.
Right.
Yeah. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit, anybody out here watching, what do you want them to know about you, Steven DeLisle, or what makes you different?
I think what makes us different is I attempt at a very high level to listen more than I speak. My wife might not say the same thing. But for clients, what I'll do is I'll sit down with them, and I've figured out over the years, I've been doing this for 10 years now, and I think I got really good at listening, asking really great questions. A good book to listen to if you're an agent, or frankly anybody should listen or read this book. It's Good Leaders Ask Great Questions, John Maxwell.
Yeah.
So I listened to that multiple times, and I just realized that I don't have to be the most fascinating person in the room. I actually want you to talk the most, because then I'm going to understand how to serve you best. I don't care if you're buying a mill house. I don't care if you're buying an investment property or your last home. It's really just focusing on what your goals are first and prescribing to that. To me, we make really good money, and you don't walk into a doctor's office talking to the doctor directly, do you?
Yeah.
You talk to the receptionist. So actually on most of my, if not all of my meetings, I have someone with me that's taking notes so I can be in the moment.
Yeah.
And having the eye contact, understanding their body language. If they're stressed out about it, make sure that they're like, hey, it's okay. We're just having a relaxed conversation about real estate. There's no pressure.
Yeah.
And today I'm going to give you a lot of data, a lot of information. And at the end of the day, you have the information to make the best decision. It doesn't matter if you buy a house now. I'm not going to be able to force you into that, because then you're going to break the contract, and that doesn't benefit anybody.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. And if people are looking to find you, where can they find you at?
Yeah. DeLisle Properties across the board is, I think we've done a pretty good job at making sure everything is synced
nice
together.
And easy. Yes.
Got a YouTube channel that is not just about homes. It's also about the area, what it feels like to live here in Greenville, which I've found is really more beneficial for out-of-state people, finding different restaurants and things like that, just to get a feel for the style of life that you would live in this location. But if you want to reach out to me, cell phone number is 864-506-3706, and shoot me a text or call.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I've seen your YouTube videos, and I've seen a lot of real estate agents' YouTube videos, and I really love how you make it not focused on hard selling and more about like what it's like. You know, you're painting a picture of what it's like to be in the Greenville upstate area. So
yeah, I mean, the byproduct is you buy a house.
Yes.
But I want to know what can my kids play out back? Do they have?
Is it
have
safe?
A park?
Yeah.
You know, what does it feel like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good restaurants, all that stuff. Cool, man. Well, thank you for coming on. Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
All right, brother.